All right, let's jump right in. We are absolutely surrounded by information every single day, right? But have you ever really stopped to think about how it's all organized? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on information architecture, the invisible but totally essential structure that shapes our entire digital world.
Oh, you know you have. We all have. That feeling of being hopelessly lost on a website, clicking around in circles, or trying to use an app and just not being able to find that one simple thing you need. That frustration, that's not your fault. That is a failure of information architecture.
Here's a perfect case study of this whole problem. Just think about Apple's iTunes. It started out so simple, didn't it? It was just a great little tool for the 40 or so albums on your computer. But look at it now. It's this massive, sprawling ecosystem that tries to manage millions of songs, movies, apps, and books across every single device you own. And for a lot of us, that beautiful simplicity has just turned into total confusion.
And that really gets to the heart of the issue. We're practically drowning in an information glut. There's more data in more formats on more devices than ever before. But that doesn't automatically lead to clarity. More often than not, it just leads to chaos, making it feel almost impossible to find what we're looking for. So how in the world do we fix this digital mess? Well, we need a plan. We need a blueprint. And that blueprint, the solution to all this chaos, is information architecture. So, what is it really? At its core, information architecture, or IA for short, is all about making information findable and understandable. And I absolutely love this way of putting it. It's about creating places made of information. See, it's not just about organizing files in a folder, it's about designing entire environments that we can actually navigate and make sense of. This quote just nails a key truth about IA. The very best information architecture is often completely invisible. You don't really notice when a website structure is logical and intuitive. You just find what you need without thinking about it. But you definitely feel its absence when it's bad.
Here's a fantastic analogy to help this click. Think about a game of chess. The rules, how each piece moves, how they interact, how you win, that is the information architecture of the game. Those rules define the entire experience. It really doesn't matter if you're playing on a fancy marble board or a cheap little travel set. That fundamental structure, the IA, is exactly the same.
Okay, so if we're going to build this invisible blueprint, what are the core ingredients? Well, it all comes down to finding a sweet spot between three key elements. People in the field often call these the three circles of information architecture.
First, and you could argue most importantly, you have the users. These are the real people who will be using whatever you're building. What do they actually need? How do they go about looking for information? What are their ultimate goals? You simply can't design a findable system if you don't understand who's doing the finding.
Second is the content itself. The actual stuff we're trying to organize. Is it a bunch of articles, videos, product details, services? You have to understand how much of it there is, what its structure is like, and how you can describe it with metadata, which is really just a fancy way of saying data about your data.
And the third circle is context. This is all about the real-world constraints. What are the business goals? What's the budget look like? What are the technical limitations? Heck, even office politics can play a role. A good IA has to work in the real world, which means balancing the needs of the users and the nature of the content with the goals of the organization.
Now, a solid information architecture doesn't just magically appear out of thin air. Not at all. It's the result of a really deliberate, thoughtful process. It's all about moving from a deep understanding of the problem to a concrete plan of action.
So the process always kicks off with research, which is where you do a deep dive into those three circles we just talked about: users, content, and context. Once you've got that solid understanding, you develop a strategy, which is kind of like the high-level game plan that sets the direction. And only then do you move into the design phase, where you create the actual blueprints, things like sitemaps and wireframes that map out the whole structure.
So what do these blueprints actually contain? Well, an information architect is usually designing four key systems. First, there are organization systems to group and categorize everything. Then you have labeling systems. These are the actual words you see on menus and buttons. Third, navigation systems that help you get from A to B. And finally, searching systems so you can just type in what you're looking for. These are the tangible building blocks of that invisible structure.
I love this story because it perfectly captures why that strategy phase is so critical. You have to know what you're building before you start laying all the digital bricks. Are you building a simple garage or a magnificent cathedral? Because if your team thinks they're building a cathedral, but the plan is actually for a garage, you're going to end up with a very, very confusing and unusable mess.
Okay, so we've gone through what IA is and how it's made, but let's bring this all back home. Why does any of this invisible blueprint stuff matter in your everyday life?
To put it really simply, good IA makes your life easier. It's the quiet hero that lets you effortlessly find a product on a shopping site, or quickly change a setting deep inside an app, or make sense of a complex topic on a news site. It works so well, you don't even realize it's there.
And on the flip side, bad IA is the direct cause of that digital frustration we all know so well. It is, quite literally, a blueprint for confusion. It's the reason you click around in circles on a website, why you give up trying to complete a task in an app, and why you feel completely overwhelmed by digital clutter.
So, as we've seen, information architecture is this powerful, invisible blueprint that structures our entire digital world. And now that you have the language to see it, I'll just leave you with this question. As you go about your day today, what invisible architectures will you start to notice?